Hello there, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Licciardello.
This week, a trade war, threats of a war over Greenland, and a judge pauses Trump's federal funding freeze.
The war on woke is also well and truly underway, and Melina Wicks is going to look at the big job ahead for the new Defence Secretary. But first,
Donald Trump has made an immediate and controversial impact on the world stage during his first week back in the White House. Let's start with what might well be the shortest trade war in history between the United States and the South American nation of Colombia, which largely played out on social media. It was sparked by Colombian President Gustavo Petro's refusal to accept migrants being deported from the US in military planes.
Saturday, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro writing on X that they would not accept flights until the Trump administration creates a protocol that treats migrants with dignity, writing, quote, "A migrant is not a criminal and must be treated with the dignity that all human beings deserve. That is why I returned the U.S. military planes that were carrying Colombian migrants. In civilian planes, without being treated like criminals, we will receive our fellow citizens."
Well, that kind of talk provoked what was described as a furious reaction from President Trump. The American leader taking to Truth Social to announce countermeasures, including
emergency 25% tariffs on all goods coming into the United States in 1 week, and the 25% tariffs will be raised to 50%.
Although the official White House press release did draw some derision by misspelling Colombia, and President Petro, who was jailed and tortured as a leftist guerrilla leader in the 1980s, was not for backing down. He hit Trump back with reciprocal tariffs on US goods, declaring on ex-Twitter, "I resisted torture and I resist you." And for a few hours, it looked like Americans might soon be paying a lot more for their coffee beans and Colombians would be seeing some steep price rises for soybeans until sanity or something prevailed. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announcing on ex-Twitter, the government of Colombia has agreed to all of President Trump's terms. She even spelt it right this time, and the Colombian president retweeted her, indicating an endorsement of the statement, so back to business as usual.
look, it's no wonder they backed down, John. Trump actually even went harder than just tariff threats. He was also threatening financial restrictions, like America previously imposed upon Iran. That would have crippled the Colombian economy, and that is a huge overreaction given what Colombia appeared to be complaining about, which was not taking illegal immigrants. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the way the migrants were being sent, shackled and in military planes. I mean, Colombia has no problem taking migrants back. They took 126 plane loads back just in 2024. Also, to be clear, if Trump had gone through with his tariffs, they would have hurt America as well, because Colombia is one of the few countries that has a trade deficit with America. In particular, they're America's second biggest purchaser of corn from states like Iowa, Indiana, and Nebraska. So Trump seemed to be going pretty hard here for not a lot of reason. I suppose, though, what Trump's people would say is, one, there are a lot of Colombian illegal immigrants to deport, about 240,000 of them, at least in 2022, so he wanted to draw a line. And more importantly, they'd probably say that this was sending a message to other countries as well that might refuse to take back all illegal immigrants, especially their criminal migrants. They'd probably say that Trump isn't taking any crap from countries trying to get in his way, and he's putting America first, and which is basically why people voted him in. So I reckon Trump supporters, they probably would have loved this exchange.
Yeah, probably so. Meanwhile, a war of another kind may be brewing between the United States and another previous ally, Denmark, if the Danes don't agree to sell Greenland to Trump.
I don't know really what claim Denmark has to it, but it would be a very unfriendly act if they didn't allow that to happen, because that's for protection of the free world. It's not for us, it's for the free world. Right now you have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have ships from various countries. It's not a good situation.
Also this week, Trump reportedly had a fiery phone call with the Danish PM, Mette Frederiksen, during which he was aggressive and confrontational, with European officials briefed on the call concluding it was, quote, horrendous. Although a Danish member of the European Parliament had a pretty simple message for the American president.
Greenland have been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, off.
Very undiplomatic.
Yeah, succinct though. Just for the record, Trump was doubting the Danish connection to Greenland. Denmark's been tied to Greenland for about 300 years. That's their connection. And I'm not sure anyone's going to be convinced that Trump wants to bully his way into controlling Greenland because he wants to promote freedom?
Yeah.
But whatever.
Watch this space. Other diplomatic highlights for the week for President Trump included a plan to, quote, clean out Gaza by having Palestinians go to Egypt and Jordan, adding that the exodus could be temporary or could be long-term. Well, not surprisingly, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority condemned the proposal. Jordan and Egypt have also rejected the idea.
Yeah, the Palestinians have a word for this kind of strategy. It's called Nakba. The Nakba is what Palestinians call the mass displacement and dispossession of Palestinians back in 1948. Gaza, in fact, is the result of Palestinians being displaced from what today is called Israel. And to this day, they are still fighting for the right to return to their old lands after that Nakba. So I don't think they're going to be too receptive to another Nakba from Gaza to somewhere else. But there's also another element to this which would be disturbing to Gazans, I imagine, and that is this policy very closely resembles something Jared Kushner has been talking about recently.
What I would do right now if I was Israel is I would try to say, number one, you want to get as many civilians out of Rafah as possible. I think that you want to try to clear that out. I know that with diplomacy, maybe you get them into Egypt. I know that that's been refused, but with the right diplomacy, I think it would be possible. But in addition to that, the thing that I would try to do if I was Israel right now is I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there. I know that won't be the popular thing to do, but I think that that's a better option to do so that you can go in and finish the job.
That strategy sounds familiar. And while Jared Kushner isn't actually part of the administration, he has said that he is there to fully help and advise Trump in an informal capacity. Okay, so who cares if Kushner's giving Trump ideas? Well, the problem is this. Kushner has also recently received the green light from Israeli regulators to double his stake in Phoenix Financial, which is an Israeli firm. And that stake allows Kushner to pursue lucrative investment deals in Israel. Investment deals like, say, a real estate concern in Gaza, perhaps? We don't know. What we do know, though, is that Trump does have a few aces up his sleeve when it comes to convincing Egypt to take Palestinians from Gaza. In particular, the new administration has frozen almost all American foreign aid throughout the world, except to Israel and Egypt. That, John, is what they call leverage.
Yeah.
Having said that, I cannot see the Palestinians going for this, but he'll try.
Yeah, indeed, he will. For more, we're joined by one of America's leading conservative foreign policy and defence experts, James Carafano. He's a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a former advisor to President Donald Trump. James Carafano, welcome to Planet America.
Thank you for having me.
So what did you make of this admittedly very brief trade war with Colombia this week? And do you think the same tactic will work with Mexico and others?
Well, tariffs have several purposes: to protect industries. That's not the issue here. Raise revenue, that's not the issue here, and really to drive behaviors. And so, people often say President Trump is transactional, which he is, but that's not always symmetrical. I mean, very clearly, this was the use of a tariff to send a very, very strong signal about what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. And the notion of the United States wanting to return citizens to their country who are not legally in the United States, that is certainly appropriate under international law, and a country essentially refusing to cooperate in that. The president was just sending a very, very strong signal that was not going to be tolerated.
Jim, Trump's often presented himself as a peacemaker, someone who thinks America should mind its own business. Yet in the last few weeks, he's been rattling cages in Panama and in Greenland. What do you think's going on there?
Well, I do think that's actually part of peacemaking. It's Panama and Greenland in particular have always been strategically vital, not just to the United States, but literally to every country in the Western Hemisphere. Panama is the critical link across the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, as concerning, for example, as people are about freedom of transit in the Red Sea. Greenland is the absolutely strategic point in the transatlantic bridge. Greenland and Iceland are crucial to the bridge to Europe. These have been strategic realities for the United States since 1918. We have always cared about these things. They always directly impact U.S. interests. What's really changed is, in the last several years, we have seen so much Chinese and Russian and Iranian influence in our theater that the potential for them to directly impact in the physical control of strategically vital points in the Western Hemisphere has become a real danger. And what the president, again, is signaling, look, I don't think we're going to be seizing Greenland or invading the Panama Canal again anytime soon. What the president is signaling is he takes these dangers very, very seriously, and he expects our friends and neighbors to take it very seriously. I got to tell you, having talked to people both in Panama and in Greenland, they're not put out. They actually acknowledge that this is a fair concern, and they're going to have to work with the United States to address this.
We have heard President Trump be very critical of both Russia and Ukraine in recent days. He has, of course, failed to deliver on that election promise to end the war on day one. So what do you think happens next?
Yeah, look, I think this is baked. I mean, it's very clear that President Trump is not going to abandon Ukraine. It's also very clear that President Trump and President Zelensky are really of one mind on what needs to happen here. And I got to tell you, I think 99% of Europeans are exactly where President Trump is. They want innocent Ukrainians to stop dying, and then we're going to all commit to rebuilding a free and independent Ukraine. And Russia has failed here. The president has. Matter of fact, I think Putin has made a massive strategic blunder in his initial response to the president, which was really quite dismissive. And Putin doesn't have a lot of cards to play. His economy is weakened. Our energy policies are going to make it even weaker.
So, Jim, do you think the left's going to be surprised by how pro-Ukraine that final ceasefire is that Trump is going to shepherd through?
Only because they're idiots, to be honest with you. No, I'm serious. I mean, I think people have a Trump in their head rather than actually paying attention to Donald Trump. Donald Trump never thrown Ukraine under the bus. Now, I would be the first to say, are there voices in the United States, even on the right, that are very skeptical of Ukraine, don't want to support Ukraine? Absolutely. But that's not Donald Trump. And he's never done that. He's never said that. So I think the people that were just screaming that Trump's going to abandon Ukraine, Trump's a Russia lover, this is, I mean, the facts and the reality have just never said that was in the cards. I'm just really shocked that people are surprised that Donald Trump and Zelensky actually have the same goals here.
Jim Carafano, thank you for being with us on Planet America.
Well, thank you for having me.
Chaos and confusion reigns in Washington, D.C. and across the United States this week after a memorandum from the Office of Management and Budget threw trillions of dollars in federal grant money into doubt yesterday. A memo coming from the acting director, Matthew Vaith, announced a temporary pause of agency grant, loan and other financial assistance programs and requiring agencies to identify and review all federal financial assistance programs and supporting activities consistent with the President's policies and requirements. Now, it clarifies that this order should not be construed to affect Social Security or Medicare recipients and does not include assistance provided directly to individuals, but an awful lot of federal money is indirect. It goes to states and other organisations, not-for-profits, charities that provide individuals with some form of aid. And it seems it had an immediate effect when the online system through which the state Medicaid departments receive federal funding stopped working. Well, in her first official briefing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was struggling to explain what was going on.
This is not a ban. This is a temporary pause and a freeze to ensure that all of the money going out from Washington, D.C. is aligned with the president's agenda. And as the Office of Management and Budget has updates on what will be kickstarted once again, I will provide those to you.
So not so clear. The office then tried to better explain itself, saying that any program not implicated by the president's executive orders is not subject to this pause. But There have been hundreds of executive orders in the past week, and they've been covering all sorts of areas of government spending, so the uncertainty continued. There are also questions about whether the president even has the legal power to do this, to turn off the money in this way, because Congress appropriates and directs federal funds. Earlier today, a federal judge put the funding pause on pause. A hearing's going to be held early next week on that. But in the meantime, agencies and not-for-profits who are federally funded don't know if they can pay for their ongoing programs.
And just to be clear, John, there's nothing wrong with the president reassessing and re-evaluating grants. I mean, that's their job.
It's
in the
their
new
prerogative,
administration.
sure.
Absolutely, and no one would begrudge that. The issue is to reassess these grants, you don't need to freeze them in a haphazard way for an indefinite period of time that may well be illegal. That's the problem.
Yeah, Colombia got off lightly by comparison. The Trump administration, though, is continuing to take shape this week. His controversial pick for Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, was confirmed on the weekend. It was a close call, though, with Vice President J.D. Vance needed to break a 50-50 tie in the Senate. Only the second time there's been a tiebreaker on a nomination like this. Kristi Noem had an easier vote to be confirmed as Secretary of Homeland Security. Turns out Cricket the dog didn't get a vote for obvious reasons. This week there are also hearings for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. They're going to be controversial. We'll have more on those on Friday night's Weekend Edition.
It should be interesting viewing. Gabbard's confirmation hearing might actually matter because she's on life support at the moment. So that's going to be really close. Now, Trump's cabinet may be becoming clearer, but the mystery that is DOGE certainly is not becoming clearer. Recall DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, is supposed to be Elon Musk's pet project to cut fat from the US budget. But Trump's executive order creating DOGE actually just created it by renaming the US Digital Service to be the US DOGE Service, and then the same executive order declared DOGE to be, quote, a software modernisation initiative to improve the quality and efficiency of government-wide software, network, infrastructure and IT systems, which would promote interoperability between agency networks and systems, ensure data integrity and facilitate responsible data collection and synchronisation. Huh? Now, maybe that's all a ruse, because it just so happens that the way it was created happens to ensure it will not be subject to the Freedom of Information Act, which will allow it to keep communications and information secret from Congress and the public. So that is extremely interesting. And something is going on with DOGE, because not only did Vivek Ramaswamy leave before the administration even began, but this week, DOGE's top lawyer said he was leaving as well. Once again, before they even started. It's all highly curious, John.
It is indeed. Seems nobody wants to work with Elon. Now, Pete Hegseth's confirmation as Secretary of Defence certainly raised a lot of questions, not least of which was his fundamental qualifications for the job, or lack thereof. He's got to manage America's biggest government agency now. Well, here's Melina Wicks with the briefing room.
When Pete Hegseth faced his confirmation hearing, Democrats accused him of being unqualified for the role.
What's the largest number of people you've ever supervised or had in an organization in your career?
Not 3 million.
And we're hiring you to be the CEO of one of the most complex, largest organizations in the world.
One senator said Hegseth has less experience than an Applebee's manager, which is unfair. Applebee's has nothing in common with the military, except they're both very deadly. The Department of Defense isn't just big. It's one of the largest organizations of any kind in the world. It has nearly 3 million employees with a yearly budget over $1.3 trillion. That's more than the entire budget of the Australian government. I haven't seen such eye-popping numbers since Hegseth's breakfast gin and tonics. The Department of Defense is the largest employer in the United States. And we're not just talking about soldiers. They're considered the largest employer of engineers, scientists, mathematicians, civil service workers in the US government, psychologists, and full-time musicians. They run the largest employer-sponsored childcare and the nation's largest healthcare system. And after that, they still have to find money for Tom Cruise movies.
Yeah, I guess when I see something, I go right after it.
The military is also a major source of funding for research, which has given us technological breakthroughs we use every day, like the internet, GPS, and aviator sunglasses. making at least one American civilian forever grateful.
I'm doing this because maybe when I need a job, Ray-Ban may have me as a sponsor.
They won't. The military is also a major driver of social mobility through education. Last year alone, more than 900,000 veterans or their families received subsidized college or training. And 62% of student veterans are first-generation college students. When 6% of the country's adult population are veterans, in addition to the 3 million people currently serving, you can see why some people are worried about putting a guy in charge who was forced to step down by both of the non-profit advocacy groups he ran after allegations of financial mismanagement, sexual impropriety, and personal misconduct. But to be fair, it's not like the previous management of the Department of Defense didn't have room for improvement. The department has failed to pass an audit every year for 33 years. I'd say Hegseth should take an axe to wasteful spending, but I'm pretty sure he's not allowed to use them anymore.
Hegseth accidentally hit a drummer with an axe during a live broadcast on Fox and Friends in June 2015.
Pete Hegseth describes himself as a disruptor. And disruption can be a useful and even necessary thing. But given the US military permeates so many parts of American life, let's hope he has better aim in this job than he did in his time at Fox and Friends.
President Trump travelled to fire-ravaged parts of California over the weekend, making nice with the man he calls
No scum.
The pair even hugged it out on the tarmac, and things seemed quite cordial.
I appreciate the governor coming out and meeting me, Kevin.
We're going to need your support. We're going to need your help. You were there for us during COVID. I don't forget that.
I love it when Mum and Dad get along. And at times, Trump sounded like a traditional president in a time of crisis.
We're going to work very hard with the mayor, the governor, the supervisor, and everybody, and get the resources behind you.
Great, except Trump wants a few strings attached to that federal aid.
In California, we want them to have voter ID so the people have a voice, because right now the people don't have a voice because you don't know who's voting, and it's very corrupt. And we also want them to release the water.
Water and voter ID. In fact, the water thing has been a hobby horse of Trump's for years now. Most of California's water is in the north of the state, while most of its people are in the drier south. And dams and canals channel rain and snowmelt from the mountains in the north, and they route it down to the south. Now, Trump wants even more of that water sent south, while the state lets some of that water flow through an estuary system and out to sea to preserve the environment.
Yeah, the only problem with Trump's plan, though, is that it would provide no extra water to Los Angeles. In fact, most of the extra water from Trump's plan would be sent to the San Joaquin Valley, and so it's apparently wrong to connect that water management to the firefighting in LA. This hasn't stopped Trump tweeting yesterday, though, that, quote, the United States military just entered the great state of California and under emergency powers turned on the water flowing abundantly from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. The days of putting a fake environmental argument over the people are over. Enjoy the water, California. Now that there is weird, especially since the California Water Agency replied with, the military did not enter California. The federal government restarted federal water pumps after they were offline for maintenance for 3 days. State water supplies in Southern California remain plentiful. So, is the water agency lying? Or is the president becoming a little bit delusional? It's still not clear. News agencies are arguing with each other over this one, but I do have a suspicion, John.
Yes, as do I, Chaz. Meanwhile, Trump's unhappy with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which works with local and state emergency responders, like in California, and ultimately helps to fund recovery and rebuilding efforts. In fact, Trump is now threatening to scrap FEMA altogether.
FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money. It's very bureaucratic, and it's very slow. Other than that, we're very happy with them.
Trump has since signed an executive order creating a task force aimed at revamping FEMA. That revamp could actually recommend getting rid of it altogether, although only Congress legally can do that. Trump, meanwhile, has unleashed a purge on departmental watchdogs, sacking at least 17 inspectors general who were informed via rather blunt emails that due to changing priorities, they had been terminated immediately. And in another sign of the changing times in Washington, D.C., all federal employees in diversity, equity and inclusion roles are on immediate leave because, quote, those offices and programs are being ordered shut down. Agencies have also been ordered to take down any language or advertisements about their DEI initiatives.
Look, Trump attacking diversity initiatives is kind of what people voted for. Trump couldn't have been more upfront about having DEI in the gun before the election. So I'm not going to knock that. That's democracy. People vote for it and then they get it. But firing a bunch of independent umpires like inspectors general, well, no one voted for that. Now, just to be clear, there are 73 inspectors general. So sacking, I don't know if it's 12, 17 or 18 of them, I've seen all those numbers reported, isn't a huge proportion of the total. And Trump also absolutely has the right to hire and fire inspectors general. But the way he's fired them does seem to be clearly illegal. The law explicitly states that the president must notify Congress of any IG sackings at least 30 days before he sacks them. He clearly didn't do that. What's more, he has to provide a, quote, substantive rationale, including detailed and case-specific reasons that he sacked each IG. And Trump clearly didn't do that either, given we still don't even know the exact number of people that he sacked. Also, we should note that the reason this law was even passed was because in his first term, Trump manipulated vacancies to fire inspectors general and then replace them with more pliant officials. So Trump is breaking a law here that was only written because of his prior abuses of power. That's not great, but I guess we'll see how bad it is when we find out who he's replacing these people with. Now, for his part, Trump says he's not going to be replacing them with lackeys. He said, quote, I don't know anybody that would do that, but we'll put people in there that will be very good. We'll see, John.
Oh, we will.
Hey kids, are you sick of boring video games that teach you nothing about the tech industrial complex? Introducing Oligarchy, the only board game endorsed by your 12th favorite one-term former president.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America.
With game tokens of all your favorite tech billionaires from the inauguration. Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk, and Donald Trump's well-licked boot. Turn unlimited money into political influence.
I bought the White House. I'm the head of DOGE. I won TikTok in a beauty contest.
Just donate enough money to stay out of jail, and you can get away with anything. Oligarchy. It's the only board game where you write the rules. Out now.
And that is all for another trip to Planet America. Do join us on ABC News on Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for Planet's Weekend Edition.
We're also going to be back here on ABC TV next Wednesday night at 9:40 p.m. and both shows are on ABC iView, YouTube and Facebook. See you there.
Bye-bye.